In those court documents Grace broke down for us, there is another key piece to this story. Dante Brooks is on federal supervision for charges from 2019. KCTV5 investigative reporter Samantha Boring joins us now live in studio to break down how this plays out. Samantha?
Brad, the federal charges we found mean Dante Brooks should not have had a gun. In addition to DNA, his federal supervising officer helped identify him. Court records say she was sent a screenshot of the video in the club, and she confirmed that was her client. Here's what we know about his federal case in the District of Kansas. In 2019, Dante Brooks was indicted on drug and firearm charges. These include possession with intent to distribute cocaine base and marijuana, and possession of a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking. He eventually pled guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release. This past August, the court modified his supervision due to repeated failed drug tests and missing tests. He is a convicted felon as a result of this case, and since he is considered a felon, this could mean he could face harsher penalties as he was not supposed to have a firearm by Missouri law. Brooks is being held on a $200,000 bond. He is set for a bond hearing review next Wednesday. Live in studio, Samantha Boring, KCTV5 Investigates.
Thanks, Samantha.